At Christmas, Aunt sighed, you used to be sweet. And I thought, I used to think I deserved what they did. I had my fingers wrapped around a mug of peppermint tea that had gone lukewarm. And for a second, I honestly wasn't sure if she'd said it out loud or if my brain had supplied it for her. The living room was too warm, fairy lights blinking in that slow, nauseating rhythm. My cheeks were already flushed from the heat and from the way everyone had gone quiet after I'd said, actually, I don't really talk to Dad much these days. Aunt Linda's eyes had slid over me, top to bottom, like she was inspecting damage. Then she gave that little breathy laugh and dropped it. You used to be sweet. It was Christmas at my parents' house for the first time in 3 years. I'm 28 now, and I'd managed to avoid this exact room for exactly 36 months. I'd done the sorry, work excuse, the we're going to my partner's family this year excuse, true once, lie twice. And the 1 year I straight up had COVID and physically couldn't come. This year, though, my mom had texted me in October, like she was trying to beat my avoidance to the punch. It would mean so much to your father if you came home for Christmas. Just dinner. Just family, right? I said yes with conditions. I'll come for a few hours, I told her on the phone. I'm not staying over, and I'm not drinking. There was a pause. You're still on that no alcohol thing? She'd asked, like sobriety was a weird diet I'd get bored of. Yes, I said, still on that. So there I was, nursing tea while everyone else worked through their second or third glass of wine. The tinsel itching my neck because Mom insisted on making us all wear those flimsy paper crowns from the crackers. The kids were in the den watching a movie. The grown-ups were in the living room doing what grown-ups in my family always do. Telling stories that aren't quite lies but aren't quite true, either. Mom had just finished telling the one about how I used to sing for anyone who'd listen, how I'd put on shows in the lounge and how our little Emily was such an angel. When Linda sighed and hit me with the sweet comment, like a closing line, I forced a little smile, the kind that doesn't show teeth. I'm still sweet, I said lightly. Just with a spine. A couple of my cousins snorted. Dad made a face, like he'd bitten into something sour. Mom said, don't start, please. In that tight voice that always meant if you make a scene, it's your fault. Linda held up her hands. I'm just saying, she said, shrugging. You were such a soft little thing, always so polite. You never talked back. Now every time I see you, you've got opinions. She made it sound like a disease. What I didn't say was, I had opinions back then. I just learned early that having them out loud was dangerous. When I was a kid, sweet was my job. I was the quiet one, the peacemaker, the kid who knew how to read the house like a weather report. I could tell by the way my dad shut the car door whether dinner would be a storm or a drizzle. I knew the difference between Mom's I'm fine that meant talk to me, and that I'm fine that meant don't even breathe too loud. I remember being maybe 7, sitting at this same coffee table coloring in a Barbie coloring book. Dad came home from work, slammed the door. Mom stiffened in the kitchen. I knew that sound. It was a bad day sound. He stomped in, tie already yanked loose, eyes scanning for something to land on. There was mail on the table he hadn't wanted. A toy left in the wrong place. A school form Mom had forgotten to sign. It didn't matter what it was. The house itself was guilty. Why is this here? He snapped, grabbing my crayons, sending them skittering. I was drawing, I said, heart jumping into my throat. His hand caught the back of my shirt, hauling me to my feet. You know I don't like clutter everywhere, he snarled. How many times do I have to say it? Mom's voice floated in from the kitchen, brittle. She's just a kid, Mark. He whirled on her. Because you never make them clean up. The argument crackled around me like static. I did what I always did. I tried to make myself smaller. I collected the crayons with shaking hands, muttered, sorry, even though I hadn't done anything wrong. After he'd left the room, I remember Mom brushing my hair back, sighing. You know how he gets, honey, she said. You're my sweet girl, right? Help me keep him calm. That's what sweet was. Not kind or good-hearted. It was useful in absorbing impact. By the time I was 10, everyone in the family knew the roles. My older brother, Jake, was the golden child. Loud, sports, got into trouble at school, but boys will be boys. He could talk back and Dad would laugh and call him a little shit. If I tried the same thing, I'd get, "Don't you dare use that tone with me." I remember one Christmas, fittingly enough, when I was 9. The house was full of people, same as now. There was tinsel everywhere and that same fake pine candle Mom likes. Jake had just knocked a glass ornament off the tree wrestling with our cousin. It shattered, glass everywhere. Dad's face went red. "Idiots," he barked. "Do you ever think?" Jake shrugged. "Sorry." Already backing away. Our cousin disappeared somewhere. I stood up to grab the broom, because that's what sweet kids do. They fix. My hand slipped picking up a shard of glass, and I sliced my palm open. Blood welled up, bright red on my skin. "Oh, for..." Dad stalked over, grabbed my wrist too tight, dragged me to the kitchen. "Look at this. Can't even pick up properly. You always have to make everything harder." I remember staring at the blood on the tile floor, the sting in my palm, and thinking, this is my fault. I should have been more careful. Not he shouldn't be yelling. Not they're the ones who knocked it off. Just this solid belief that if I'd been better, sweeter, quieter, things wouldn't escalate. The adults loved telling me I was sweet. Aunt Linda especially. She'd pat my head and say, "You're such a good girl, Em. Not like these little terrors." Meaning Jake and the other boy cousins, all skidding through the house like puppies. Then she'd go back to the kitchen and ignore the way Dad's voice shook the walls. The first time I broke character was when I was 15. It was a Tuesday night. Funny how those stick in your memory. I'd just gotten my maths test back, 94%. I'd worked my ass off. I brought it home like a trophy. Dad glanced at the top corner, grunted. "Why not 100?" he said. I missed a couple, but the class average was. "I don't care about the average," he snapped. "If you can get 94, you can get 100. You're just lazy." Something in me snapped quietly. I'd had a rough week. I'd been staying up late helping Jake with his English assignment because you're better at that stuff. Plus doing my own homework. Plus dealing with a teacher who copied my work as an example for the class without my permission. I was tired. And 15. And so done. "I'm not lazy," I said. "It's a good mark." The room went quiet in that vibrating way. Mom looked up from her magazine. "What did you say?" Dad asked, voice low. "I said it's a good mark," I repeated, my heart pounding. "You could just say well done once. You don't always have to." His hand hit my cheek before I could finish. Open palm, sharp crack. My head whipped to the side. It wasn't the hardest he'd ever hit me, but it was the first time with an audience. "Mom, Jake, all there." Mom gasped. "Mark." He pointed a finger in my face. "Don't you dare talk to me like that," he snarled. "You don't like how I am? Move out. Until you pay rent, you shut your mouth and you do as you're told." My eyes stung more from shock than pain. Jake stared at the table. Mom said, "You shouldn't talk back, Emily. You know how your father is." And Aunt Linda, when she heard about it later, because nothing stays secret in a family like ours, it just gets reshaped, said, "Well, you used to be such a sweet girl. Teenagers, hey? They get a bit of attitude, think they're adults." No one said, "He shouldn't have hit you." So I learned. Sweet equals quiet equals safe-ish. Attitude equals slap plus lecture plus being told I was the problem. I went back to sweetness. I shrank again. Then I left. University was 20 kilometers away but felt like another country. I made friends who talked about their parents like they were actual people, with flaws but also capacity to listen. People whose "my dad yelled at me" stories were like one-off volume spikes, not weekly storms. I dated someone whose mother once called him to apologize for a sharp comment. I didn't know moms did that. The distance made things both clearer and harder. I drank a lot. Turns out if you pour enough cheap vodka on top of anxiety, it looks a bit like confidence for a while. I was fun at parties, then crying in bathrooms once everyone left. I told funny stories about my childhood in the "haha, my parents are crazy" way. People laughed. A couple of times, someone went quiet and said, "That's a not normal, you know?" I laughed that off too. It wasn't until 26, after a proper crash, panic attack at work, heart racing, convinced I was dying in the staff bathroom, that I walked into therapy. My friend had a card for a counselor and practically shoved it into my hand. Leah, my therapist, did this thing where she listened without making, "oh my God" faces. Sounds small, but it made it easier to talk. I told her about the slaps, the yelling, the way my parents could go days without speaking to me if I upset them. I told her about the sweet label, how proud everyone sounded when they used it. She asked me, "When they called you sweet, what were you usually doing?" "Keeping the peace," I said automatically. "Being good, helping, not causing trouble." "So sweet meant?" "Useful," I said, and heard how awful that sounded. "Compliant. Small." She nodded. "And what did you have to do with the feelings in the house?" "Manage them," I said. "I mean, not officially. But if Dad came home in a mood, I'd be extra quiet. If Mom was crying, I'd make her tea or do the dishes before she asked so she'd smile. If Jake was in trouble, I'd take the blame sometimes, so it wouldn't get worse." Leah tilted her head. "How old were you when you started doing that? 8? 9? Would you expect that of an 8-year-old now?" And I just sat there, because of course I wouldn't. Slowly, painfully, I started to pull apart the story I'd been handed. The story that went, "We were strict because we loved you. You were such a sweet child. We did our best. You're so ungrateful." I learned words like parentification and emotional neglect. I learned about nervous systems and fight or flight, about how my whole body had been on high alert my entire childhood. And yeah, I got sober. That's a whole other post, but the short version is, once I sobered up, it got a lot harder to pretend everything was fine. Booze had been a great way to blur the edges. Without it, the edges were sharp. The first time I set a boundary with my parents, it was about something small. I told them I wouldn't answer the phone after 9 p.m. My mother has this habit of calling at 11:30 p.m. to vent about Dad or Jake or her boss and then getting offended if I sound tired. Some of us have to get up early. I joke, but it wasn't a joke. I texted in the family group chat, "Hey, just so you know, I'm not taking calls past 9 anymore. If it's an emergency, text and I'll call you back in the morning." Dad left it on read. Jake responded with a thumbs up emoji. Mom called me at 10:45 that night. "I saw your message," she said, voice tight. "Is that about us?" "Yes," I said. "I need sleep." She sighed dramatically. "We just feel like we're losing you," she said. "You used to be so sweet. When I started saying no to things." "No, I can't drive you to the shops right now." "No, I won't mediate between you and Dad." "No, I won't cancel my therapy to come over." Sweet started disappearing from their vocabulary. It was replaced by words like cold, distant, selfish. Aunt Linda started asking, "What happened to you? You were such a lovely child." What happened is I stopped believing I deserved what they did. So back to this Christmas. Me on the couch, lukewarm tea in hand, paper crowns slipping down my forehead. Aunt Linda sighing how I used to be sweet. I could feel old reflexes buzzing under my skin, like static, apologize, soften, promise to visit more, laugh it off. At the same time, something newer in me was just tired. Not explosive, not outraged, just done. I took a sip of tea. Tasted like toothpaste and regret. "I used to be scared all the time," I said instead. My voice surprised me. It came out steady. "That probably looked sweet to you." The room shifted. It's wild how you can feel that, even if no one moves. Dad's eyes flicked up from his phone. Mom froze mid-fiddle with a piece of tinsel. Linda laughed, but it was thin. "Oh, don't be dramatic," she said. "We all got yelled at a bit. That's just how it was. You turned out fine." I heard the rattle of my anti-anxiety meds in my bag in my head. Like Aunt's line had its own laugh track. "Fine." "I didn't," I said. "I have panic attacks. I jump when doors slam." I spent years thinking everything that went wrong was my fault. That's not fine. Mom put her wine glass down a little too hard. Can we please not do this on Christmas? She said. Your father has had a few. This isn't the time. There's never a time, according to them. Dad rolled his eyes. Here we go again, he muttered. Therapy talk. My heart sped up, but I leaned back into the couch instead of forward like I used to, begging them to understand. You all get to tell your version of the past, I said. How I was sweet. How you were strict but loving. I get to tell mine too. Jake, sitting in the armchair scrolling his phone, didn't look up, but the scrolling stopped. Linda huffed. We're just saying you were a lovely, easy child, she said. Yeah, I said. That's the point. I was easy because I thought if I was good enough, quiet enough, helpful enough, maybe Dad wouldn't shout. Maybe Mom wouldn't cry and say I'd ruined her day. Maybe no one would slam a door so hard I jumped out of my skin. You all loved that version of me because she didn't make you look at what was going on. Emily. Mom's voice had that warning edge. You're upsetting people. I'm upset, I said. That counts too. Dad snorted. You're nearly 30, he said. Time to grow up and stop blaming your parents for everything. I'm nearly 30, I agreed, which is exactly why I'm not going to sit here and smile while you rewrite my childhood. It wasn't a perfect speech. My hands were shaking, my stomach was doing somersaults, my brain was yelling shut up, but the words came anyway. The silence afterward was thick. The Christmas movie in the other room kept playing, some animated character talking about the true meaning of family. It would have been hilarious if my eyes didn't burn. Linda recovered first. She tootayed. See? This is what I mean, she told the room. She's so hard now. You used to be sweet as anything, Em. Always helping your mother. Always with a smile. I thought of 7-year-old me wiping Dad's muddy footprints off the kitchen floor before Mom got home so she wouldn't get yelled at for not keeping the house nice. I thought of 12-year-old me bringing Dad a beer after he punched a hole in the wall, hoping the cold bottle in his hand would keep it from being my arm next time. I thought of 15-year-old me, cheek stinging, saying sorry for getting slapped. I used to think I deserved what you did, I said quietly. That's all. This time I said it out loud. Mom flinched like I'd thrown something. We never, she started. You did? I cut in. Maybe not in your heads. Maybe you had reasons. Stress, your own messed up childhoods, whatever. I'm sure it made sense to you. But to me, a kid, felt like punishment for existing wrong. And if you call that sweet, because I took it silently, that's messed up. Dad stood up abruptly. I'm going for a smoke, he said, even though he quit 5 years ago. Old script. He stomped out to the backyard anyway. Linda stared at me, mouth slightly open. You really think we were that bad? She asked. I shrugged, and it felt weirdly like freedom. I think you were adults who watched things happen and called the kid who survived it sweet, because she didn't make a fuss, I said. You can put whatever label you want on that. Jake finally looked up from his phone. Our eyes met for half a second. There was something in his expression I couldn't quite read. Guilt? Agreement? Fear? He dropped his gaze quickly. Coward, my old self whispered. He's scared, my newer self offered. Both could be true. I'm going to take a walk, I said. Get some air. Mom's face crumpled. You're leaving. I said I'd come for a few hours, I reminded her. It's been 3. You always do this, she said. You just drop these bombs and leave. You used to be sweet, I finished for her. Yeah, you keep saying. I grabbed my coat from the hook in the hallway, fingers clumsy on the sleeve. My reflection in the mirror by the door looked pale, eyes too bright. At least I no longer looked like I was trying to disappear. On the front step, the air was cold enough to shock my lungs a bit. I stood there, hands in my pockets, heart still racing. My phone buzzed. A text from my partner. Sam. How's it going? Want me to come get you? I exhaled, some of the tension leaving with my breath. I'm okay, I typed back. Leaving now. Will tell you everything when I get home. Driving away from my parents' house, I felt that old familiar tug in my chest, guilt, shame, the sense that I'd left something unfinished or unforgiven. Then another feeling layered over it, one I'm still getting used to, relief. Later, sitting on our couch with Sam's legs warm against mine, I told them what had happened. How Linda had sighed about me being sweet, how I'd finally said the quiet part aloud. Sam listened, squeezing my hand when I faltered. "I'm proud of you," they said. "I know that stuff costs you." "It's stupid," I said. "It's just words. It's not like they hit me this time or anything." Sam raised an eyebrow. "If someone punched you in the face once and then 16 years later said, 'You used to be so good at taking hits, why aren't you like that anymore?' Would that feel like just words?" I snorted. "Yeah, okay, fair. I think," Sam said carefully, "that every time you stand up for yourself there, you're also standing up for the kid you were, the one who didn't know she had options." I thought about that night, lying in bed, about little me in her too big Christmas jumper, carefully passing dishes around the table so no one would get mad, about teenage me swallowing comebacks like they were poison, about 22-year-old me, drunk at a party telling a story about Dad's temper and everyone laughing because I'd framed it as a joke. Aunt Linda misses that kid. She misses the version of me that absorbed everyone else's discomfort and called it love. I miss her too, in a way, not because I want to be her again, but because I wish someone had told her she didn't have to be. I don't know what will happen with my family. I'm not writing this from some place of zen where I've gone fully no contact and healed every wound. I text my mom sometimes, short updates. Jake sends memes occasionally, nothing serious. Dad pretends the conversation never happened. Linda will probably tell everyone I've become cold or ungrateful. But I do know this: I'm done aspiring to be sweet in the way they mean it. I can be kind, generous, loving. I can still bring dessert and help wash dishes and make the kids laugh. I just won't quietly swallow my own pain to keep adults comfortable. At Christmas, Aunt sighed, "You used to be sweet." And she's right in one way. I did used to think my worth came from being easy to hurt. Now, even on the days I don't feel strong, I at least know this much: I never deserved what they did. And if that makes me less sweet in their eyes, I can live with that.